Hey everyone, on today's video I'm going to be discussing anti-theism and other relevant topics. To begin, I'm going to briefly go over an article to basically summarize what atheism and anti-theism are and why they are not necessarily one and the same. This is mostly to help familiarize those watching who may be less informed on the subject at hand. Atheism and anti-theism so often occur together at the same time and in the same person that it's understandable if many people fail to realize that they aren't the same. Making note of the difference is important. However, because not every atheist is anti-theistic, and even those who aren't anti-theistic all the time, atheism is simply the absence of belief in gods, and anti-theism is a conscious and deliberate opposition to theism. Many atheists are also anti-theists, but not all and not always. When defined broadly as simply the absence of belief in gods, atheism covers territory that isn't quite compatible with anti-theism. People who are indifferent to the existence of alleged gods are atheists because they don't believe in the existence of any gods, but at the same time this indifference prevents them from being anti-theists as well. To a degree, this describes many, if not most, atheists because there are plenty of alleged gods they simply don't care about, and therefore they also don't care enough to attack belief in such gods. Atheistic indifference towards not only theism but also religion is relatively common and would probably be standard if religious theists weren't so active in proselytizing and expecting privileges for themselves, their beliefs, and their institutions. Anti-theism requires more than either merely disbelieving in gods or even denying the existence of gods. Anti-theism requires a couple of specific and additional beliefs. First, that theism is harmful to the believer, harmful to society, harmful to politics, harmful to culture, etc. Second, that theism can and should be countered in order to reduce the harm it causes. If a person believes these things, then they will likely be an anti-theist who works against theism by arguing that it be abandoned, promoting alternatives, or perhaps even supporting measures to suppress it. It's worth noting here that, however unlikely it may be in practice, it's impossible in theory that for a theist to be an anti-theist. This may sound bizarre at first, but remember that some people have argued in favor of promoting false beliefs if they are socially useful. Religious theism itself has been just such a belief, with some people arguing that because religious theism promotes morality and order, it should be encouraged regardless whether it is true or not. Utility is placed above truth value. It also happens occasionally that people make the same argument in reverse, that even though something is true, believing it is harmful or dangerous and should be discouraged. The government does this all the time with things it would rather people not know about. In theory, it's possible for someone to believe or even know that, but also believe that theism is harmful in some manner. For example, by causing people to fail to take responsibility for their own actions, or by encouraging immoral behavior. In such a situation, the theist would also be an anti-theist. Although such a situation is incredibly unlikely to occur, it serves the purpose of underscoring the difference between atheism and anti-theism. Disbelief in gods doesn't automatically lead to opposition to theism any more than opposition to theism needs to be based on disbelief in gods. This also helps tell us why differentiating between them is important. Rational atheism cannot be based on anti-theism, and rational anti-theism cannot be based on atheism. If a person wishes to be a rational atheist, they must do so on the basis of something other than simply thinking theism is harmful. If a person wishes to be a rational anti-theist, they must find a basis other than simply not believing that theism is true or reasonable. Rational atheism may be based on many things: lack of evidence from theists, arguments which prove that God concepts are self-contradictory, the existence of evil in the world, etc. Rational atheism cannot, however, be based solely on the idea that theism is harmful because even something that's harmful may be true. Not everything that's true about the universe is good for us, though. Rational anti-theism may be based on a belief in one of many possible harms which theism could do. It cannot, however, be based solely on the idea that theism is false. Not all false beliefs are necessarily harmful, and even those that aren't necessarily worth fighting. Now that we all have a good understanding of what these terms mean, I will now present a quote from Sam Harris. No rational atheist or new atheist holds religion accountable for every idiotic or unethical thing religious people do. We blame a religion only for what its adherents do as a direct result of its doctrines, such as opposing gay marriage or killing apostates. Atheism has no doctrines. It does not demand that a person do anything or refrain from doing anything on the basis of his unbelief. Consequently, to know that someone is an atheist is to know almost nothing about him, apart from the fact that he does not accept unwarranted claims of any religion. Atheism is simply the condition of not believing in Poseidon, Thor, or any of the thousands of dead gods that lie in the graveyard of we call mythology. To that extent, everyone knows exactly what it is to be an atheist. He has simply added the God of Abraham to the list of the dead. If a belief in astrology were causing people to go berserk, to deny medical care to their children, or to murder unbelievers, many of us would speak and write about the dangerous stupidity of astrology. This would not be bigotry or intolerance on our part. It would be a plea for basic human sanity. And that is all that an atheist criticism of religious tribalism and superstition ever is. If you understand this, you will recognize any attempt to blame atheism for specific crimes, great or small, for what it is, a fresh act of religious demagoguery. As you can see, the second and third paragraphs here describe atheism and how it's mainly based upon the lack of evidence for theistic claims. Thus, it concerns itself only with the truth claims made by theists. The first and fourth paragraphs lean more towards anti-theism. It's not really about the validity of religion, but what theists do as a result of their respective religious beliefs. While Harris's statements of "we blame a religion only for what its adherents do as a direct result of its doctrines" is accurate, I myself take a more Hitchens-esque approach. Of course, Sam has gone further, especially in his book, The End of Faith. Faith drives a wedge between ethics and suffering. Where certain actions cause no suffering at all, religious dogmatists still maintain that they are evil and worthy of punishment. Sodomy, marijuana use, homosexuality, the killing of blastocytes, and yet where suffering and death are found in abundance, their causes are often deemed to be good. Withholding funds for family planning in the third world, prosecuting nonviolent drug offenders, preventing stem cell research, etc. This inversion of priorities not only victimizes innocent people and squanders scarce resources, it completely falsifies our ethics. It is time we found a more reasonable approach to answering questions of right and wrong. My point is that this faith, this religious belief and way of thinking pollutes our minds. It distorts or prohibits one from thinking rationally, or objectively as possible, about any given issue, circumstance, or proposition. Think of your brain as a computer. Now let's say, for example, an individual is a Christian, and you ask this person what he or she thinks of a particular idea, issue, or event, etc. Let's assume you've asked something that would shape, alter, or conflict with their worldview, probably regarding evolution, homosexuality, or just morality in general. They will undoubtedly filter it through their faith-based belief system. Obviously, there are factors that will be at play here, such as their specific beliefs, their particular denomination, if any, what level of fundamentals they do hold about their religious texts, and so on. Clearly, not all religious people follow their holy books the same way, nor do they hold the fundamentals or tenets of their religion to the same degree. There are Muslim jihadists who kill or suicide bomb in the name of their faith, just as there are more moderate or liberal theists who simply believe that the earth is 6,000 years old, or that prayer actually works. Regardless of where any given theist falls on this spectrum, faith is at the core of it all. It's what influences and shapes their view of reality and subsequently motivates their actions. Again, this is not to say that all faith-based beliefs are intrinsically harmful, but far, far too many are. Thus, this is why we should all oppose this thought process that is void of reason. It is the one constant factor that leads otherwise intelligent or rational people to think it morally good or justified to kill apostates, to oppress women and homosexuals, to not give your child medicine because you believe in the power of prayer, and so much more.
Well, what astonishes me when I read the newspaper or watch the news is how many problems are the direct result of what people believe about God. I mean, there are days when I open the New York Times where fully half of the stories are, in a way that's unacknowledged by the paper, relate to people's religious convictions. I mentioned the Virginia Tech shooting. I mean, this was the role that religion played in providing a context for this shooting was never really discussed in the media. But I mean, we just hear that the mother happened to be, a devout Christian and schlepped her child from church to church in search of exorcism. I just see continually our attention bound up in these competing ideas about God. At best, this is often just a waste of time, but at worst, it is manufacturing violence and unnecessary conflict and misuses of our resources. And what's more, it is very rare that we acknowledge. I mean, now we're beginning to acknowledge the role that Islam is playing in Muslim terrorism, but even that has been very slow to come. I mean, it has been obvious for many, many years, long before September 11th, that a certain style of Muslim infatuation was leading to this kind of jihadi behavior. Because of the respect we accord religious faith, we're very slow to acknowledge its causal role in conflict.
Now that I have expressed my position on anti-theism, I would like to respond to some of the more common opinions of other atheists and theists concerning anti-theism, as well as several other claims, misconceptions, and falsehoods. The first of these is the claim or general opinion that atheists, more specifically anti-theists, are intolerant and or abusive and mean, and that we should be nice and basically not criticize or question their beliefs rigorously. It should come as no surprise that some Christians or Muslims hold such a view of anti-theists, but much to my dismay, there are also atheists who share this sentiment. Now, I'm not sure whether they simply want to be seen as one of the nice atheists, or they're just completely indifferent. Nevertheless, I've already shown how religious belief and faith is harmful, and I will provide more on that later in the video. Let's just take a look at some examples of this idea about intolerance of atheists.
But it's so counterproductive if you look at it just from an objective point of view. Putting up a sign like this just makes people angry with you, all right, because they feel they're being insulted, and they are. It's an insulting sign, is it not?
It's horrifically insulting. It's really disrespectful, but not unlike the bully who tries to push other people down in order to make themselves feel better. That's what's happening here.
While some atheists are content with not believing in God and allowing others their choice to do the opposite, there is a loud and screeching minority that has made it their job to tell you that if you believe in God, you are stupid. Even erudite and very intelligent men like Richard Dawkins proselytize. That's right, they proselytize by explaining that God does not exist and people who believe in a prime mover are, in his words, delusional.
Number 3, it has a religious bigotry problem too. The ugliest religious bigotry in the YouTube atheist community is, of course, directed at Muslims, who are commonly stereotyped as potential terrorists and whose religion is viewed as inherently worse and more dangerous than any other. But there's still plenty of judgmental condescension left over for Christians and religious folks in general. Many YouTube atheists will still cite belief in God as evidence of mental illness, thus denigrating religious folks and the mentally ill at the same time. Not that they give a shit. Pushing the religious into the mud and then pointing and laughing at them is one of YouTube atheism's most treasured pastimes.
This is what popularity does to a lot of people. It effectively neuters most of their opinions. And for me at least, makes them a complete bore to watch.
Then stop fucking watching me. If you are that intolerant of ideas that you don't agree with, please change the YouTube channel and only watch people who make their positions very clear and are militant about their positions. Don't try to rein in the craziness. Let's just feed the craziness. Let's be the craziness. Let's become the craziness.
So how do we determine what constitutes intolerance? We could look at the dictionary definition. Lack of tolerance, unwillingness, or refusal to tolerate or respect opinions or beliefs contrary to one's own. For a better picture, let's see what tolerance is. A fair, objective, and permissive attitude towards those whose opinions, beliefs, practices, racial or ethnic origins, etc. differ from one's own. Freedom from bigotry. Well, that gives us a good general idea, but where do we draw the line? Where does our intolerance end? Should we tolerate those ideas, beliefs, practices, or even people when they seek to infringe or remove the same of others? I think not, and clearly it is bigoted to treat people differently or be intolerant of them based upon arbitrary characteristics such as race, sex, and so on. Since this video is mainly about anti-theism, I will focus on that, so please have some tolerance while I express my opinion. I think there's a rather simple way of determining what is and isn't tolerance with regards to what people say or do. Our individual rights and freedoms is one such factor. As in, if someone advocates the removal of another's rights and freedoms, or if someone infringes upon another's rights and freedoms, then that person is being intolerant. I'm not trying to do this. As far as I can tell, most, if not all, atheists or anti-theists are not trying to take away or obstruct other people's rights either. Also, in the words of Faisal here, you can't be a bigot against an ideology. Bigotry is against people, not ideas. If an idea can't stand up to scrutiny, logic, or reason, it shouldn't be upheld at all. That's what faith is, an idea that has no validity or merit. Building upon this, there are indeed people who hold ideas or beliefs that I or others may find abhorrent, immoral, irrational, and so forth. I can oppose that person based on that. They still get to have their views, but I can question, criticize, or mock those ideas and beliefs without being a bigot or intolerant. In the realm of speech concerning ideas and beliefs, either it's all intolerance or none of it is. And let's be really honest here. Even if all of us were extremely nice when questioning or disagreeing with theist beliefs, many of them would still perpetuate this claim that we are intolerant, mean-spirited bigots. Lastly, when porch atheists or religious apologists claim anti-theists are intolerant of theist beliefs and or ideas, it is pure projection. Since they want us to stop criticizing their ideas and beliefs, they are therefore being the intolerant ones. I have no desire to rid people of their right to believe whatever they wish, but if they choose to share those ideas and beliefs, then they are willfully consenting to engage in public discourse. No ideas or beliefs are protected. None have any sort of protection. They have no special privilege. This is the marketplace of ideas, and no idea or belief is deserving of some special privilege, regardless of how much some wish it were so. Basically, if you don't want your ideas or beliefs challenged in any way, shape, or form, then keep it to yourself. Because asking me or anyone else to refrain from expressing our ideas or beliefs in criticisms or opposition to your ideas and beliefs is actually you promoting the very intolerance you claim to be against. Moving on. The next claim is about America, or rather Western society in general, being based upon Judeo-Christian values.
Very few people talk about the character destructiveness of the entitlement state. We talk about the economic destructiveness. But the character destructiveness is ultimately more dangerous, because democracy, and this republic in particular, can be sustained only with a noble population. The founders knew that. It was only possible if people were very concerned about their own character and integrity. So I would, the breakdown of religion, specifically the Judeo-Christian values, as embodied specifically in most numbers in Christianity in America, people do not monitor their character nearly as much. You know, you'd go to church, you'd go to synagogue, and obviously more went to church, and you would hear about whether everybody lived it or not is not the point, but you would hear about having to be a better person, that there was such a thing as sin in life. In secular society, there are sins. You know what they are? Emitting carbon dioxide. That's a sin. We have just as many sins, but they're not sins of character. They're sins of environment. They're sins of not pushing for the right governmental policies, because leftism is a religion. And it has taken over for Christianity in large swaths of America.
Necessarily believing Christians, but just to return to the cultural Christianity that was, you know, the old joke about, oh no, when the Jehovah's Witness knock on your door, oh no, we're not religious here, mate, we're Church of England. You know, that you know all the hymns, you recognize the biblical quotation, the things that were standard in Britain a generation ago, and on most of the continent, and we're along, even getting back to that.
Yes, I try to. I mean, some of the things I say in the book about slowing down the migration flow and all these things are sort of practical suggestions, but these are the ones. These ones are the ones
the
that
big
really
existential things.
I mean, I'm not asking people to be believing Christians. I'm not a believing Christian, but one of the things I say is that we are Christians anyway, whether we like it or not, and we're probably finding that out at the moment. I mean, where the hell do people think that human rights came from?
Yeah, right.
I mean, these are things that exist on the embers of Christian thought.
Here I will use some clips from Dark Matter 2525's video called The Theft of Our Values to show why this is demonstrably false. And I have to assume that people like Douglas Murray here have simply threw their skepticism to the fucking wind on this, or never read any damn history to know how bullshit of a claim this really is.
Christianity loves to take all the credit. But when you delve into the actual history, you find that at best, Christianity played only a part, and at worst, it was active opposition. So I think what David is actually referring to is the way we look to the natural world as a reference point to systematically gain knowledge. Unfortunately for David, this was common practice in ancient Greece, hundreds of years before Christianity. Greece fell, Rome fell, and their knowledge was suppressed by Christian tyranny only to resurface and become a vital part of the very same scientific revolution David credits Christianity for causing. You'll see once again that it was Christianity that fought tooth and nail against something that caused greatness, only for Christianity to take all the credit once the greatness was realized. Historically, this has been Christianity's typical MO. Fight a war against progress, lose that war against progress, and when that progress turns out to be a good thing after all, claim credit for that progress. After Rome fell, Ancient Greek philosophy, science, literature, and politics, which heavily influence Western culture today, were largely lost. This knowledge was discovered by the Arabs, who translated and preserved the knowledge in Arabic. It's no coincidence that many Muslims claim Islam is responsible for the creation of science. Ancient Greek knowledge was finally rediscovered by Europeans, who translated it from Arabic to Latin and introduced it to Europe during the 12th century, which, as any historian will tell you, was the reason for a major turning point in history. This was something new to them, something different, something we can look to as a reason for a paradigm shift, precisely what is necessary for a scientific revolution. The recovery of ancient Greek philosophy culminated during the 13th century, coinciding perfectly with the Renaissance and subsequent scientific revolution, a much more narrow timeline than the 1500 years Christianity had to allegedly inspire this sudden change. On the contrary, rather than inspire the scientific revolution, Christianity delayed it. So while many American values, including the structure of our government, were inspired by ancient Greece and Rome, for the betterment of society, we absolutely had to have the will to override some of those values, like the approval of slavery, and the toxic mingling of government and religion, a thing the founding fathers of America were at least wise enough to reject from the very beginning, thereby working against nearly half of the 10 Commandments. The most unique and foremost of our values, those that protect our freedom of speech, religion, press, and assembly, are absent throughout the vast majority of a Christian history that often enforced the very opposite of our values as Americans.
As you can see, our values stem from the Greeks and Romans, not from Christianity or any other religion. The religious opposed as much as possible, and thus simultaneously removes any morals one would attempt to accredit them with as well, seeing as how they burnt people at the stake for not mindlessly falling in line. Also, please go check out the full video from Dark Matter 2525 and subscribe. He makes some really great content. This claim of Judeo-Christian values seems to also be a rallying cry, that we should align with Christians and possibly support them in their beliefs in some fashion in order to stop or oppose Islam. And to that I say no thanks. I'm not going to let Christians gain any ground whatsoever towards a theocracy either. We've seen, as the previous clips showed, exactly what a Christian theocracy looks like. This is the equivalent of asking me to choose communism in order to oppose and fight against fascism, or vice versa. No, go fuck yourself. I refuse to side with either shit ideologies. On to the next issue I want to discuss, that is with religious moderation. I will now once again quote Sam Harris in order to help express the issue with religious moderation. No one is suffering under the doctrine of Islam more than Muslims are, particularly Muslim women. Those who object to any attack upon the religion of Islam as racist or as a symptom of Islamophobia display a nauseating insensitivity to the subjugation of women throughout the Muslim world. At this moment, millions of women and girls have been abandoned to illiteracy, forced marriage, and lives of slavery and abuse under the guise of multiculturalism. This is a crime to which every apologist for Islam is now an accomplice. The point I'm going to make here is that any apologia, any dismissal by way of no true Scotsman fallacies, or any attempt to distance yourself from the more fundamentalist type within your religion is pure obfuscation and denial that it has anything to do with your religion. Look, no one is saying all believers are equal and that they want to do the same things as the extremists of your faith, but employing this tactic to alleviate your religion from any blame makes you part of the problem. Not only that, but it is an epic display of narcissism on your part. You have taken some terrible tragedy and made it about you and how you're not like that, or you would never do such a thing. Well, congratulations. All you've done is given yourself a spotlight to be criticized and ridiculed for this pathetic display of arrogance, while doing nothing to prevent this kind of fanatical dogmatism from happening again. Now, that's probably not your intent, but please, I beg of you, the next time some religious extremist does something horrible, just condemn it with the rest of us and work with us towards ending it. And now I would like to direct this towards my fellow atheists who refuse to call out that kind of thing. I mean, how do you find any of it comforting at all? How can you be content when you see theists or other atheists use apologist arguments, no true Scotsman fallacies, and so on to completely dismiss their religion or faith as being a factor in such events when it's so painstakingly clear that it is? Hell, ISIS and others even tell you why they do what they do, and yet some of you can't or won't ever fucking acknowledge it. Don't be a goddamn porch atheist whilst virtue signaling about how much you care about these people when it's evident you don't really give a shit. That's it for me, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.